Hello everyone, Bryan here with the Arena Decklists YouTube page, and I am back with another Deck Tech. Gonna do something a little bit different today. Usually I sit down in the Deck Tech arena bringing you something I've built or something Jerry and I collaborated on and are playing together. I want to do a little bit more highlighting of decks we get over on the Arena Decklist Twitter page. And if you're not familiar with the Arena Decklist page, number one, you should be. Number two, I'll break it down for you. It's a page where we collect ideas from the community and we retweet them so everyone can see exactly what is doing well over on Arena. Obviously, there's no mechanism like there is Magic Online to capture the best deck lists, so we took it upon ourselves to go ahead and create a Twitter account. You should follow it at Arena Decklists over on Twitter and start submitting your decks to us because we want to do more featuring of community built decks, and if you are sharing your decks with the Arena Decklist page, you might find your deck here in a Deck Tech on the YouTube page. Today's deck comes to us from Advers5 over on Twitter, and they played this deck up to number 18 on the constructed ladder. So really impressive performance for what's really a very out there deck, but when you dive into it, it's smart, it's well constructed, and I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing here. And I'm calling this deck Gruul Adventures, but that doesn't really tell the whole story of what's going on here. Gruul Adventures has been somewhat of a thing for a while now. It pops up from time to time. I know, I think Javier Dominguez and Seth Manfield played a variant of Gruul Adventures at the last PT. This list looks a little bit different than lists I've seen before, though, and I think it's starting to do some really smart things to account for the broader metagame. So why don't we go ahead and do the card by card breakdown. Of course, any Adventures deck, going to start with our friend Edgewall Innkeeper, the card advantage engine of choice for these archetypes. The thing that really appeals to me about Gruul Adventures is that the Gruul cards in and of themselves are powerful, but most setups require you to just curve out very, very well. Really don't bear stumbles all that well. You just want to continually put these overpowered threats on the battlefield and hope they hold. With Gruul Adventure setup, we're generating more card advantage, and this deck in particular does a very nice job of playing a particularly long game. So that's why I'm excited about Gruul at a time when I've been historically very, very low on the archetype. This deck doing some neat stuff, though. It starts with the card advantage engine of Edgewall Innkeeper. Stonecoil Serpent, just filling the curve wherever you need it. It will come down as X power, X toughness, reach, trample, lot of keywords on this card. Do not forget that protection from multicolored doesn't come up as often here as it does in something like, say, Pioneer, but it certainly will play and at times be very meaningful. Here's where I get real excited about the adventure package. Embereth Shieldbreaker. Normally this card not something you can main deck. We're starting to see more of it in sideboards, but here where you have Edgewall Innkeeper and Embereth Shieldbreaker might just replace itself, you're pretty happy with a 2/1 creature that just replaces itself immediately with a card when you play it. But the battle display portion of this is really effective in this metagame presently, Witch's Oven, of course, everywhere. I've postulated the best two decks very clearly: Jeskai Fires and some kind of Cat Oven variant. I'm personally high on Jund, but I've seen really nice looking Golgari lists. I've seen really nice looking variants of Cat Oven that are like Fires lists. 5-color Niv Mizzet lists are starting to pop up. All that stuff, it hinges on having Witch's Oven in play. Embereth Shieldbreaker doing a great job of preventing that from happening. I love Kraul Harpooner when Gilded Goose is a meaningful card in the format. Free pickoffs of Gilded Goose feel great. 3/2 body, nothing to scoff at. Makes sense that this is our other 2-drop of choice behind Embereth Shieldbreaker. Domri's Ambush, probably underappreciated in the format. It has some blowout potential, but I do think removal is trending down in the format right now. Less and less spot removal. Therefore, you're pretty comfortable setting up a big Domri's Ambush, dealing with your opponent's battlefield, while still generating a little power on your side. Then we have the 3-drop adventure creatures. Any green-red adventure deck going to rely on Bonecrusher Giant and Lovestruck Beast. Both sides of this, very effective cards. You get your 2 damage to deal with any weirdo targets that are cluttering up the battlefield, and then cash it in for a very big, meaningful threat in the late game. 4/3 and 5/5 when it comes to Lovestruck Beast. These bodies will do an excellent job holding the Embercleave, which we'll get to in just a second. I mentioned how this version packs more card advantage than your typical Gruul list. You see the commitment to that. It's intense. Light Up the Stage also in this deck. I have some concerns about reliably triggering Light Up the Stage. It's not going to be as easy to turn on as it is in mono red decks where you have all kinds of reach and you can just throw a shock at your opponent's face and then cash in your light at the stage. But I do think, given the adventure creatures, how much card advantage is present in the deck in other sources, you will find ways to get this to trigger and get your 2 cards for just 1 mana. If you have to play full price though, your cards are impactful enough to bear that. In mono red, when you cast light at the stage for full price, it's really, really harmful because you find like shock, basic land, and you're like, what did I just invest 3 mana into? Here, you flip over Questing Beast, you flip over a Karn. Those are meaningful magic cards that can do really big things in a game. I like light up the stage here, even if it isn't going to be as reliably triggered as it would be from mono red. Questing Beast continues to just be a ball of stats, and these stats look particularly good when battlefields are getting wide, when people are trying to hold the fort with something like Witch's Familiar. I played a lot of Jund Cat recently. My biggest fear in the metagame, unquestionably Questing Beast. I do support the full 4 copies here. And here's where things really get a little bit crazy. Karn, the Great Creator. Now, I think if this only had the Wish board, you'd pass on Karn. The Wish targets here aren't the most exciting. We'll get to them in a second. But what I really want to point out is the static ability. Activated abilities of artifacts your opponent's control can't be activated. Of course, Witch's Oven, the big casualty to Karn. If you can protect this, keep it in play, you've taken away a key element from your opponent's deck, and you get some help in your sideboard. Here's a backup Sorcerous Spyglass. If you're going to lose your Karn, you can just go get a Sorcerous Spyglass and use that to hold down a Witch's Oven. I love that setup. Of course, this card, very versatile, answers almost any problem that might ail you. Here's a real silly one. Enchanted Carriage. I suppose there are scenarios where you just need bodies immediately, and you will go get Enchanted Carriage and be happy about it. I suppose. They have not occurred for me yet. I'm willing to give it some more time and see if I actually do ever get an Enchanted Carriage. I think in a lot of spots where you just want to spend some mana, you'll probably be pretty happy with Stonecoil Serpent, but I can envision a scenario where Enchanted Carriage bails you out. It can hang out on the sideboard for now. I'm basically looking for any excuse to cut it at this stage, though. So we'll see how that goes. And then you have the 2 heavy hitters that Karn can go get. Your 3rd copy of Embercleave hangs out on the sideboard. Obviously, a lot of games are going to be decided by fast Embercleave, but I've grown to appreciate the slow Embercleave as well, where you just play your large body, your Questing Beast probably, and then when you have 5 mana, you put an Embercleave on it. That's 9 damage that is basically unavoidable with a single block, and that setup will win you all kinds of games. You're happy to play a little bit slower when Karn can do that. Let's not forget too, Karn happy to make Embercleave a 6/6 in some scenarios. But why settle for a 6/6 when you can have a 9/9, the Great Henge? I've wanted to put Karn and the Great Henge in a deck together for a long, long time. Finally, I've gotten my chance to do so. But also Great Henge just going to be another card advantage engine for you in a deck that historically hasn't had access to those type of things. So this deck can play long games very, very effectively. You're not scared to let things stretch out a little bit, but against a deck like Fires, where you're super incentivized to close the game very quickly, you do still have that kind of closing power, just based on the size of the bodies contained in the deck here. As I mentioned, the last target for Karn in the sideboard, Stonecoil Serpent. And then that about wraps up our main deck. Obviously, Embercleave needs no introduction. You know how powerful this card is, especially given our sizings here. Combination of Questing Beast is a game winner almost every time. Pretty typical mana base. 8 mountains, 10 forest, 4 Stomping Ground, and 3 Fabled Passage. Fabled Passage, sometimes a miss in these Gruul decks, but as I said, this deck happy to play a little bit longer. I think the mana consistency Fabled Passage provides is what you're looking for. In this instance, you don't necessarily need to go 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop to be in any games. Just clean up the sideboard here, talk a little bit about the non-wish board targets. You see 3 copies of Scorching Dragonfire. I like the flexibility of this card right now over something like Lava Coil. If you get a window to take out a Witch's Familiar where there's an oven not in play, you'll be happy to take advantage of that. Instant speed matters a lot there. You'll almost never take out a cat with a Lava Coil, so you see the flexibility. Also, don't forget you can target Planeswalkers with this. Nice little boost there. 4 copies of Cindervines. We are controlling those fires. We are controlling Witch's Oven. Enchantments absolutely everywhere in the format right now, as are artifacts. This deck does an excellent job of dealing with all the ones that may potentially show up. Also shutting down any kind of wilderness reclamation shenanigans very, very effectively. Flame Sweep is your way to deal with the aggro go wide decks, although you don't see a lot of that right now. You will be happy to have that one copy floating around, though, if you are paired against something like mono white aggro, which I do occasionally see. Experimental Frenzy, Domri, Chaosbringer, they're playing similar roles, just persistent card advantage sources. In this deck, you won't have those crazy Experimental Frenzy turns, so something like Domri is a little bit more on par with Experimental Frenzy in Gruul than it would be in something like Mono Red. So I like the split here. We will certainly find applications for Domri. The creature count is not exactly where I want it to be for Domri. We're looking at, let's see, 4, 7, 11 non-creature spells, at least in our main deck configuration. So you're not going to get huge bursts of card advantage, but the ability to give your creatures haste is very meaningful too, and I think that'll prove to be equally as key against the controlling decks. And that wraps it up for our non-Wishboard targets. What do you think of Advers 5 Gruul Adventure deck? Have you been playing this on ladder? I think it's a really exciting evolution for Gruul. The old Gruul decks were just bad aggro decks. This deck is at least doing something interesting. It controls the Ultra type artifact better than probably any deck in the format, with main deck Embereth Shieldbreakers, and of course more support in the sideboard, and Karn being able to do a lot to shut down artifacts as well. So as the format becomes focused on that card type, I really think this Gruul deck could have some legs. I encourage you to give it a try on the ladder and let me know what you think of it down in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this deck tech, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more here from the Arena Decklists YouTube channel.